Hello, everybody. My name's Matt. Rachel and I are 2/3 of the evaluation team for EXITO. Our boss, Adrienne, isn't here today, so she's, I think, foolishly put me in charge of talking about consent. There are two other things besides me being tall that you must know. One is that when I get a microphone, I get kind of weird. And when I know I'm being recorded, I act a lot weirder. So bear with me for the next couple of minutes here. In your sheets, there are in your folders, there are two sheets that have to do with consent. There is an informed consent letter that's two-sided and has your signature on the back, and there's another informational one-sided piece of paper as well. The gist of this is that we sign and return these, so at the end of my talk, we're going to go through and pick up signed consent forms for everybody. As I believe Dr. Crespo mentioned, that this is a study, a very large study, and it goes over 5 years, maybe 10 years. And the purpose of this is not only learn from your experience, it's to inform and improve how EXITO is done. And to help future students as well, because this can't be funded in perpetuity. So there are things we are hoping to learn in the study that we can share this information with later. This data, so that's what the evaluation team does. We collect a lot of data from you over the next 3 years. The other piece of this is, that's how you get funded, is that you have to show that the money they gave you went somewhere. So we're showing our funders that EXITO is worth funding for future students as well. The study collects a variety of information for EXITO and the larger build evaluation. I could name off the things you see and the things you don't see. I'll get to those in a little bit. I think Carlos also mentioned that EXITO is one of 10 different build sites. If we're thinking of build as this all-encompassing umbrella, EXITO is one of 10 different kind of sites that come down. So there's an evaluation team you see before you that you'll see Rachel a lot more than you see me. They don't let me out of the cave all that often. Then there's also a larger evaluation team that takes evaluation from all 10 build sites. They mostly do those through surveys online. We also have a lot of online surveys. And we also have a lot of other things too. So you will have a lot of surveys to fill out. They're all really important. I could bore you with the details. I want to bore you with the details because they're not boring to me. But this all leads to something too, that it's not just putting this data that we get from you and throwing it in the closet and saying, we'll look at that later. This is stuff we look at yearly, quarterly, and past years too. So it's all really important that the evaluation stuff happens. A couple of things to note, that this is a voluntary study as well. There's hopefully no coercion. It's not a condition to take this study, is not a condition for you to be an EXITO scholar. Your standing in the EXITO program and at your institution is not affected by your participation, and you can withdraw at any time. However, we can pull academic records, things that through FERPA, and because I'm scared when I'm up here, I can't even remember the acronym for what FERPA stands for. Rachel, bail me out.
Federal Educational Privacy Records Act. There we go.
That was actually a test, and you passed. I knew it all along. So the second sheet that I've added to you has two different things on it. One is when we talk about academic records, we talk about institutional records, and then we shorten that to IR. These are records like academic standing, grades, GPA. These are things that we are able to collect as authorized representatives of PSU, of Build EXITO, and of the NIH as well. So that's what this first two paragraphs, and then the more information you can find at the website. The second piece is a consent for this build level evaluation. So this is the larger 10 group that you mostly just get emails for. So it might make sense if you're signing this consent form and say you're good to go, but you're also going to be emailed by the Coordination and Evaluation Center out of UCLA in California, but the CEC, they might just have Teresa Seaman as the name of the doctor who is the lead of this, but they'll be sending you emails, sometimes via us, sometimes their own email, but they'll be sending you yearly emails as well. This is a larger, again, this larger scale of looking at 10 different build sites as well as comparing this to national surveys as well. So that's this form that does not require a signature. So the second page of this as well, you can see your signature, the print name, and the date today. We also take privacy very seriously as an evaluation team. The data that you give in surveys is very confidential. Any personally identifying information from student records, from EXITO tools and instruments, they're all removed and they're stored into actually either password protected storage or in a locked case, in some cases in our office. We use codes once we get your name for things. Aside from this consent form, we use codes for your names that we sign everybody a unique ID. This is getting into the weeds, but this is study stuff. The data that we share is only shared in the aggregate, so it's not saying like 1 out of 97 persons has all of these defining characteristics, so that if you were a gumshoe, you could exactly figure out who this person is. All this is shared in large generalities as to not personally identify anybody from now until the end of time for EXITO. And the last thing too, I know we have just a handful of students or scholars who are under 18. Under Oregon law, if you're under 18, you can't consent to studies. You have to be, I believe the term is assented. That is having your parents sign it as well. Rachel, you might have received an email from Rachel before this orientation, which was probably weird, that you just got it from somebody you didn't meet yet. That's Rachel. And if you have not gotten the signature of your parents yet, don't sweat it. Basically, we're going to collect all these consent forms, and those that we collect and basically mark as one. That way you will get your orientation survey on Friday online. If you don't have the consent form filled out, we're going to check just to make sure we didn't lose it, and we can send the survey later. But this is historically when we get our best response rate of all time. I believe, yes, last year we got 100%, which can't be beat, only tied. And we have not had the opportunity to tie 100% response rates for any survey yet. So prove me wrong, Cohort 4. Prove me wrong. I think that's it for the consent talking points. Are there any questions anybody has about consent for this study? I did not. Yes. Will we be able to review the results of this study? Yes, so that is one of my many promises that I try to make, is there is a feedback mechanism for evaluation. And mostly it occurs within the people that run the study, that we want to show that gateway courses are working or aren't working, how we can fix them. But there's also an element to the people who take the surveys, right? Like, I can tell you that I don't lock it in a box and don't look at it, but you're taking me at my word for it. So what we like to do is, at least within these newsletters that Jen will send out, is we try to, from time to time, send out results of surveys. Of orientation survey would be the most closest one to be able to say X percentage of people responded to this question this way. It's not a big thing, it's not a small thing either, because I think it does, my hope is that it involves and inspires people to respond more, because we are using this, and it is important to see how things are going. So that's a very long answer to a short question. I could have said yes, but we will, yeah. Any other questions? All right, I think I hit a triple. I will ask for our folks to start picking up consent forms, and we'll just go around the tables and pick them up. So you can sign and date. I believe the date's the 20th. So while we're signing and dating, I just want to talk a little bit more, because we have the time, about what evaluation does in a study like this. When we have 2 full-time people trying to collect data, that ends up being a lot of data. And we'll be collecting from you over the next 3 years. Now, multiply that by cohort 4, we're collecting each cohort over 3 years. So that's 12 renditions of the same survey for people. So it starts to get busy really fast. Our whole point as evaluation, I think I mentioned, is to prove that the study works and to improve. So there's a duality to this, is that we're trying to prove that EXITO and the things that we think are important actually do move the needle. Second to that is the improving, that the data that you are able to send, we're able to send to faculty, to yourself, to be able to say, this needs improvement, or this is excellent, this is how this is working. So there's a two-pronged approach to it. The amount of data that we collect from you, you'll probably, there's the iceberg idea. There's an amount that you see when you get surveys from us, and there's a lot underneath it as well. We talk about consent form signing, that's a thing, focus groups, interviews, orientation survey, the follow-up orientation surveys, which happens yearly. We have 2 different surveys that actually are research learning communities, that we ask how you're doing in research learning communities. And then we start collecting things underneath the surface, where it's our mentoring data, mentoring matching that you have with people, the quarterly institutional record data, induction, immersion, and gateway courses, and research learning community information. So there's a whole lot that we are doing for evaluation, and the point I want to get across is that we are hard to find sometimes, even though the height. So when you're going, at PSC students especially, you'll be seeing Rachel a lot at the enrichment sessions, and as well as hearing from us beyond just your 3 years here too. This is a longitudinal study. So we want to find out what happens after undergrad. We want to find what happens in grad school and after grad school, and what things you publish and how great your professional lives are going to be. We want to find that out, and that's really important to the grant as well. So it's really an excuse for me to tell you that there's an awesome survey name called the Legos Longitudinal EXITO Graduate Online Survey. We're real big fans of that survey. That's another one of these surveys that's going to be going on yearly after you finish EXITO as well. That's all I got. I think we have all the consent forms. We're going to go through. You'll see us again on Friday when we actually walk down to a lab and take the survey. It's going to be sent to you online the morning of Friday, but we're going to have an opportunity to take it in the flesh, in person. If you ever have to make surveys or take surveys or have other people take surveys, believe in survey karma, that if you take other people's surveys, they will take yours. So I think with that, I'm going to get off the table and off the stage here and let someone else do some talking. But thanks so much for paying attention to me on a very exciting thing we like to call consent. So thank you.